So it was an election blowout. Absolutely blew out every expectation. The government still shut down. It's now the longest in history, and so much more. I'm Adam Kinzinger. I was in Congress for 12 years, an Air Force pilot for 22, and this is your weekend review. Now, before I get started, the thing I want to tell you is go this weekend and watch on demand. It's on Apple TV, it's on Amazon, it's on Google, iTunes. Watch YouTube TV, I think. Watch The Last Republican. I have no financial interest in it. I don't make a dollar, but they followed my family and I during the January 6th stuff, and I think you'll like it. It is a funny documentary as well. Like, it's educational, but it's also funny. Okay, that's my pitch for Last Republican. Go watch it. On the YouTube channel, by the way, there is the ad for it, so you can find it there. So let's talk about Tuesday. What happened? Well, the Democrats way outperformed expectations. So there's a lot to talk about. I'm going to try to get through this very quickly. Uh, Basically, they thought that New Jersey, for instance, and Mikey Sherrill was going to be very close. It ended up being a blowout. I think 13 points, something like that. Virginia, kind of the same thing, a much bigger victory than expected. Even the guy, Jay Jones, running for attorney general, who had some real scandals in terms of some text messages he sent, ended up winning, really getting pulled over by the finish line on the finish line because of that blowout. You saw in Georgia, there was a utility commission. Democrats won that in Georgia. And so it was a unbelievable day. And now this is very important for really kind of putting a bit of a hamper in what Donald Trump wants to do. And then because it's really kind of the first time he's hit a wall, right, in terms of what he wanted to do. And in a year, now is going to be the midterm elections. And if the Democrats take the House or the Senate or the House and the Senate, they can really block his agenda and then start calling people in to testify. So Donald Trump could be basically effectively done proactively being president in a year. And obviously, he will still have the powers of the presidency, but will not be able to proactively get some things done. So Republicans are very concerned about this. They're concerned at what they've seen. They're concerned that it was a bigger blowout than they imagined. Now, it's no surprise that Democrats won in New York City. Within the Democratic coalition, there's discussion about that. I'll leave that for another argument, another discussion. But the fact that this was a blowout has concerned Republicans. One of the biggest interesting things about this. So Donald Trump came out and said, I initially I thought he was going to take some responsibility, but of course not. He came out and said, well, I wasn't on the ballot. Okay, well, you're never going to be on the ballot again, by the way. He also said, that the shutdown had something to do with it. And I thought when he said that, he was going to say, so we should negotiate with Democrats to reopen the government. Instead, he said, let's kill the filibuster and reopen it. So Republicans tend to not want to do that, by the way. So, Donald Trump again fails to take responsibility. But given, understanding also what's going on with the shutdown, we're now entering some real travel chaos. I was actually flying to San Francisco and I missed the lines, but I was getting ready to leave and they were like, hey, at Houston airport, there's 3-hour lines. And I'm like, screw that. I am not waiting 3 hours. But by the time I got there, the lines were down. And if you're a TSA worker, by the way, thanks for what you're doing. These men and women are working without pay. I mean, they're going to be paid, but they're not getting their paychecks right now. And so if you are going to fly and you see a TSA worker, just know that. And they may not be in a great mood. That's okay. They're doing it without pay. So, but what's happening too is now Sean Duffy they're canceling like 10% of flights, which is creating this real kind of compression. Now, listen, I'm a pilot, right? I told you guys that at the beginning. I think the 10% cancellation is a joke. You don't need to do it because all of the airspace is still going to be controlled. And so the idea of reducing a few planes and now we have to do that because we have less people is garbage. And so I think they're doing it just to make it painful. And so again, all of that is having an effect with the government shutdown. One of the things in that election that we saw was Latinos shifting. So Latinos have been shifting heavily towards the Republican Party. In these elections, they've swung massively back to the Democratic Party. Now, why? Now, I don't think Latinos are naturally Democrats, and I don't think they're naturally Republicans. And also, they're not monolithic. They all don't vote the same. They're like white people, right? You vote however you want to vote, or you're like whatever. It's like saying like everybody that's Irish, But when you start seeing all of a sudden uh, deportations of people or harassment of people that look like you, that are American citizens, then it becomes very personal. Now, I think a lot of folks that, Latinos that vote, they all came here legally and have done it the right way. That's why they're voting. And they probably see a lot of the folks that skirt the system and like, no, you've got to do this the right way. But then they see jackbooted thugs yanking people off the street because they look Latino, and all of a sudden, that may start changing things. So we saw a massive shift back, and that, by the way, is something that's really concerning Republicans and should. And I think Trump is also repeating the same problem that Joe Biden had when it came to things like affordability. So you all probably feel this. Everything is getting more expensive. Your wages aren't keeping up. Cost of living is too high. And Joe Biden, when he was president, really kind of ignored that, and it cost him. It cost the Democrats. I think it's part of the reason Trump won again. Well, that is a issue right now still. And now Donald Trump, because he is unwilling to ever accept that he's failed at anything, is denying that it's even an obstacle. He's saying it's not a problem. He's saying everything's actually cheaper now, which is actually impossible. He's saying everything's cheaper now, and Republicans are not allowed really to go out and say otherwise, because now they're turning against Donald Trump, and he doesn't like people to say anything against him. We've seen an increase in energy costs. We've seen an increase in everything else. Now, also part of what's going on is SNAP benefits. So these are called food stamps. Federal judges have ordered the Trump administration to fund the SNAP benefits. The Trump administration has kind of said no, although there's a lot of confusion about where they are. But here's the thing, a significant amount of people that receive food stamps are Republican voters. That hasn't always been the case, but it is now. And so if all of a sudden people are not getting the food help that they need, this is going to really look bad for Republicans, as it should, but just fund SNAP. Let's fund it, right? There's over 1 million veterans that have low incomes that are on SNAP. 41% of the veterans participating in SNAP are disabled. J.D. Vance dismissed the court's directive. He called it an absurd ruling, which is insane because a judge has a right to do that. But we'll see. Well, in corruption news, Trump wine is now on sale on federal property. So if you go to a Coast Guard exchange, you can find Trump wine, and Trump's going to make money because of course he does, because he's corrupt and that's what he does. And so it was basically admitted by the Coast Guard under the Department of Homeland Security that, yeah, you can go buy Trump wine, and we're happy to have it. So there we go. Anyway, U.S. economy is on shaky grounds. We've seen job losses over the last few weeks. We don't fully know the numbers because of the government shutdown. They haven't released stuff, but we've seen unemployment rate rise. We've seen layoffs in the government sector as well as the private sector. Some of that is AI related. Some of it is bad economy related. It's showing very big warning signs. And so, I expect that, and I hope I'm wrong, but I expect within a month or two, we may be officially in a recession. And that won't make Donald Trump happy. That'll be bad for America. The worst is stagflation. Stagflation is when you have a stagnant economy that is not growing, and you also have inflation. Because if you have an economy that's not growing, the thing you do is you inject money into the economy to grow an economy. Well, what happens if you inject money? You also pressure inflation to increase. So if you have inflation and a stagnant economy, there's no tools to fix it. You either increase inflation significantly to try to get the economy to grow, or you pull money out to reduce inflation, but then you make the economy worse. That's why that is the worst thing to be in. The other thing is you have this big tariff issue, which I think is a big reason that the economy's taken the hit it has. Well, the Supreme Court is determining whether or not Donald Trump actually had the authority to put those tariffs out there. And it's appearing that they may actually say he doesn't, because the president used the International Emergency Economic Powers Act to do that. But the question is, what's the real emergency? And Chief Justice John Roberts, by the way, emphasized that tariffs are taxes on the American people. And in the Constitution, taxing is exclusively reserved to Congress. That is it. It is as clear as day. Taxing has to come from Congress. So we could get that ruling from the Supreme Court at any time. And Nancy Pelosi announced her retirement. That'll be interesting to see what happens there. I think she recognized that it's time for her to move on, and probably a good decision because, the Democratic Party certainly needs new blood and new leadership. Elise Stefanik is running for New York governor. Now, listen, here's the thing. You guys know that I started something called wearthemoutproducts.com. It's like the coolest shirts, all the good stuff, Go take a look at wearthemoutproducts.com so that everybody knows you're cool. That's what you have to do. Take a gander. We got some new stuff now about like you can't wreck the people, you can't knock them down. And we're going to be putting new products out all the time. So go take a look at wearthemoutproducts.com and let me know what you think in the comments. Hope everybody has a great weekend. Take care.